When a young man moves into a residential complex, he'll become part of a very peculiar family. Pack your bags, your toothbrush, and your books because it's time to move to BOKURA wa Minna. After 3 disastrous years of high school, Kazunari USA is looking forward to starting afresh and leading a quiet, normal life in college as a freshman. On a trip to the library, he can't help but notice one of his new classmates reading a book, and almost immediately, he's smitten with her. USA tells one of his mates that since his parents had to move for work, he finally has the chance to enjoy life on his own. On his way to his new home, or rooming house, our protagonist encounters a strange young man peeking through the fence of an elementary school. USA's first instinct is to call the police, but he's surprised when the strange man calls him by his name. The man tries to justify his actions, and suddenly a cop arrives and after a short chat, takes him to the police station, allowing USA to make his escape. Our protagonist arrives at the Kawai complex and is greeted by the landlady, the friendly and chatty Sumiko, who first explains that his room is a shared one, so he'll have to live with a roommate, who, to USA's dismay, turns out to be the strange guy he just met, Shirasaki Shizuru. USA wants nothing to do with living there, especially under those circumstances, so he decides to leave, but as he reaches the door, he discovers that another of his housemates is none other than the library girl, Ritsu Kawai, Sumiko's niece and the daughter of the real owner of the complex. Ritsu greets the new tenant politely, but their interaction goes no further, so she continues on her way, ignoring the young man who, on the other hand, tries to talk to her and follows her, until Ritsu threatens him for trying to invade the women's section of the complex. Sumiko explains to USA that the inn is divided into 2 sections, men and women, and under no circumstances is a man allowed to step into the women's area, to the point that said area is riddled with traps. Women, on the other hand, are allowed to be wherever they please. After accepting the harsh reality and hoping to spend his youth with Ritsu by his side, USA quickly makes peace with his current situation, except because Ritsu is completely oblivious to his feelings for her, or even to his existence at all. Shirasaki, who is determined to become his friend, tries to cheer him up by telling him to look forward to meeting the other 2 female residents, Mayumi Nishikino and Sayaka Watanabe. Late in the afternoon, USA runs into a voluptuous and distressed woman drinking alcohol by a river while throwing a tantrum. USA recognizes the woman from one of the photos Shirasaki showed him and realizes she is one of his housemates, so he tries to help her, but the jilted woman tries to seduce him. Ritsu soon appears to put an end to their arguments and introduces USA to Mayumi, who had just returned from a trip and broken up with her last boyfriend. After calming Mayumi down, Ritsu escorts the 2 home for dinner, where USA discovers that the young woman's demeanor is more pleasant at dinner time, surrounded by her housemates. With the holidays approaching, Sumiko decides to take a trip for a few days and leaves Ritsu in charge, warning the tenants to behave or she'll snitch on them, and as punishment, Sumiko will hike up the rent for the troublemakers. USA wakes up to find Shirasaki putting together some weird rings, but he wants no part of it, especially when the guy asks him to get some glycerin for his new experiment. At Shirasaki's request, USA goes looking for Mayumi to invite her to whatever the quirky man is planning. USA heads to the edge of the women's area and is attacked by a depressed Mayumi, sad to know there are many happy couples out there, yet no one is dating her. USA invites her to Shirasaki's planned activity, but the woman gets suspicious when USA mentions the activity involves a lot of glycerin, fearing the man might want to take advantage of her vulnerable emotional state. However, when they go out to the yard, they discover Shirasaki is making soap bubbles and invites his friends to join him. USA and Mayumi play with the bubbles, made of water, soap, and glycerin to make them bigger, which lifts the woman's spirits, making her feel much better and enjoy playing. Ritsu comes home and sees them having fun, and although she initially pretends not to care, she decides to stay and read in the yard, so her neighbors invite her to join. Ritsu has fun, and one of the bubbles pops in her mouth, causing USA to get overly excited, leading to an awkward moment between them that ends with her slapping him. Later, Sumiko returns, and it's laundry time. As USA walks through the house, he finds an item on the floor and thinks it's Ritsu's underwear, but it turns out to be a hairband. Sumiko asks USA to help Ritsu sort the laundry, and the two chat a bit. Then USA watches as Ritsu bursts into laughter when Shirasaki and Mayumi have a laundry mishap, bringing joy to the tenants as it's rare to see the young woman laugh. Later, USA finds another hairband, and when he goes to ask the women who it belongs to, the band snaps open, revealing it to be underwear, earning him another slap. That night, the tenants gather to watch a horror movie, which terrifies Ritsu, and USA comforts her. Later, we meet another tenant, the sweet and young Sayaka, though Mayumi warns him to be wary, as beyond her looks, she likes causing trouble. After a few eventful weeks at the Kawai complex, the relationship between USA and Ritsu remains, in his own words, uncomfortably distant. USA buys a bicycle and is excited about the idea of taking Ritsu to school. The rest of the tenants encourage him to invite her, as they all know USA likes Ritsu, but when he asks, she coldly replies in front of the other residents that she'd rather be dead than go with him to school by bike. Trying to hide his broken heart, USA goes to school, and Ritsu feels terrible for what she said because, although true, her preference for death over being seen has nothing to do with him, but rather with her being very shy and unable to stand being seen. That's why, at school, Ritsu talks to USA, apologizes for her harsh words, and explains exactly what she meant, and our protagonist explains that, although hurt, he now understands everything. While Ritsu reads in the library, USA realizes he likes the young woman even more than before. Later, when USA returns home, he finds chaos as the residents are arguing among themselves, and in the midst of it all, Ritsu is very sad. It turns out an ex-boyfriend of Mayumi has contacted her, throwing the house into disarray. Mayumi initially wants nothing to do with him, as he cheated on her, but slowly begins to doubt and thinks maybe she should give him another chance, eventually answering the phone. The next day, despite her denials, the other tenants realize Mayumi has fallen for her ex again, but they can't do anything about it. After all, she's an adult responsible for her own decisions. Finally, Mayumi agrees to meet with her ex, and on the way, she runs into Ritsu. That night, during dinner, Mayumi realizes her ex-boyfriend's treatment of her isn't worth it and returns home to her friends. When Mayumi returns home, Ritsu greets her in tears, happy, then explains to the other tenants that her sadness was because she's been reading romance novels lately, and the protagonists resemble Mayumi in the sense that they always date hopeless men. This relieves USA, as he thought Ritsu was suffering from love, but in the sense that she was in love with someone other than him. The next day, an incident involving Sei, aka brings trouble to the Kawai complex's doorstep, and USA ends up in the middle, almost getting beaten up by one of the young woman's suitors, if not for Ritsu saving him at the last moment, which further infuriates the suitor, thinking our hero is dating both girls. Sayaka hints to USA that Ritsu saved him because she feels something for him. This triggers a heated argument about how Sayaka handles her personal affairs, and Sumiko warns the troublesome young woman to stay away from USA and Ritsu, or she'll raise her rent. Given Sayaka's innocent insistence, USA becomes more determined to walk Ritsu home even though she insists on being left alone. At home, everyone's dining and drinking, but they're shocked when Mayumi refuses to eat or drink, claiming it's for her health. However, a phone call changes everything, and she immediately ditches her diet, revealing the real reason was that a friend had organized an engagement party and she wanted to slim down for it, but now the friend has broken off the engagement, ruining her plans. This leads the girls to discuss men and women and whether they can just be friends without wanting something more. Sayaka mentions Ritsu, who explains her solitude is because none of her high school friends went to the same college, and she never got the chance to get close to her classmates, leaving her alone. Sayaka counters that she's alone because she chooses to be, making USA reflect on his friend's loneliness. The next day, as they walk home, Ritsu opens up a bit more. At home, everyone notices USA following Ritsu everywhere, and Mayumi jokes that the young man reminds her of a hamster she had, running endlessly in a wheel going nowhere. Another day, concerned USA follows Ritsu to a bookstore where she meets two old high school mates. USA is happy, seeing she has friends, but fails to notice the tension, as Ritsu isn't used to chatting with people. After bidding her friends goodbye, Ritsu notices USA and flees the bookstore. He tries to talk to her, but she snaps, telling him to stop following her everywhere, leaving him heartbroken and paralyzed with pain. Ritsu, realizing she overreacted, goes home feeling guilty. Later, Mayumi finds a depressed USA crawling on the floor, telling him he reminds her of her hamster and to ignore Sayaka's words, but acknowledges she's right. Among the tenants, he's the closest to Ritsu but should not rush things with her. The next day, Shirasaki finds Ritsu hidden in the garden, asking if she's okay. She admits to feeling sad. He knows it's because of USA's efforts to make her feel accompanied. Ritsu says she doesn't know how she feels, noting the difference in her reactions to her ex-classmates and USA, whom she considers a friend yet treated poorly. Shirasaki reassures her it's a normal phase of adolescence and advises patience. USA, overhearing, decides his approach was also not ideal, so he resolves to accompany her silently, ensuring she's safe while reading a book as they walk. This allows her to be more comfortable with him, and they walk home together. On their way home, Ritsu thanks USA for everything he's done for her, but when he asks what she said, she denies it, and they smile as they walk together. Days pass, and USA continues to silently accompany Ritsu to school, everything going great until one day they come home to find a drunk Sayaka trying to kiss Mayumi. Sumiko calms her down by putting a plastic bag over her head, giving everyone a break. Then, Sayaka explains she met with old friends the night before, and one brought an ex-boyfriend, making her uncomfortable all night, especially when he tried to kiss her, leading her to kick him and leave angry, resulting in the drinking and the incident with Mayumi. This sparks a discussion on how each of the three girls treats boys, comparing them to computer file folders. Sayaka jokingly tries to kiss Ritsu, but USA steps in, accidentally touching Ritsu's lips with his arm, embarrassing them both, though later in his room, he admits to finding the kiss quite pleasant. The next day, after a water gun fight, USA becomes interested in one of Ritsu's books after noticing her mood improves when reading it. He finds the writing a bit advanced but manages to persevere. During a break that evening, it's revealed Shirasaki used to write novels. Inspired by this discovery and to pass the time, the Kawai complex residents agree to play a storytelling game. Ritsu asks USA what he thinks of the book, and he says he's enjoying it, though it's a hard read. After an awkward silence, Ritsu sits down with him to discuss the book, and the others notice they make a nice couple when sharing a common interest. However, some opposing views lead to a small argument and the fear of being incompatible over differing opinions on the book, making USA regret speaking up, thinking she now hates him. Yet, as he wallows in misery, he misses Ritsu's smile, happy to have someone to talk books with even if their opinions differ. The tenants are shocked when a little girl declares her love for Shirasaki. In a flashback, it's revealed that Shirasaki had found a lost wallet on the street and dropped it off at the police station. Recently, they called him to inform that the owner had appeared and wanted to thank him. The wallet's owner turned out to be Chinatsu, a primary school girl who, accompanied by her mother, visits the lodge to thank Shirasaki in person. Then, the girl starts visiting the lodge more frequently, helping Shirasaki build a Pythagorean switch. The Kawai complex residents get involved in her social life, worrying about her lack of friends her age and the possibility of Shirasaki being attracted to little girls. After her declaration of love, he jokingly tells her she's too young for him, and maybe if she still feels the same at 18, they can talk about it. Meanwhile, USA and Ritsu wonder how, despite no visible source of income, Shirasaki never falls behind on his rent. Chinatsu makes up with her friends and brings them to the Kawai complex to eat pudding and watch Shirasaki's gadget in action. With Chinatsu back with her friends and the Pythagorean switch dismantled, all that's left is to enjoy chicken katsu, Shirasaki's favorite meal. The Kawai complex residents are on high alert as media reports suggest a criminal targeting women is loose in the area. After confirming it's not Shirasaki, the household members think of different ways to be cautious, recalling Mayumi and Sayaka's past encounters with an attacker when they were younger. The main concern is Ritsu, who loves reading while walking, oblivious to her surroundings. As it's nearly impossible for her to change overnight, USA offers to act as her bodyguard, protecting her from potential threats and earning favor in her eyes. This way, Ritsu can continue her routine uninterrupted, though USA becomes concerned with the worrisome thoughts crossing his mind. Time passes without any sign of the criminal, so Ritsu decides to go out. However, Sumiko is warned by neighborhood kids that the criminal has been spotted near the subway station where Ritsu is. Indeed, Ritsu encounters the attacker but initially ignores him, lost in her book. When he attacks, the rest of the tenants arrive to rescue her and beat him up. Back home, USA scolds Ritsu, telling her she needs to be more aware of her surroundings. Although she initially dismisses his concern, she later tearfully apologizes. However, she then hits him for entering the women's area without permission. It's summer, and with nothing to do, USA asks Ritsu to recommend a book. When the residents dine out, USA catches the attention of a restaurant owner who sees him as the perfect fit for a vacancy at a traditional cafe with unique employees. Fearing a repeat of his disastrous high school experiences, USA is quick to refuse. To his embarrassment, it also comes to light that Sumiko had a meeting with his parents before agreeing to rent him a room, learning everything about him, which convinced her he'd fit in well with the other tenants. The next day, the restaurant owner visits the house and gives USA his uniform, a replica of a Taisho-era apprentice outfit. Initially reluctant to wear the uniform, Ritsu arrives with the books she promised and falls for him, seeing him in historical clothing. Thus, our hero decides to give the job a chance. Fueled by the attraction Ritsu feels towards him, thanks to his uniform, our hero starts working at the Historical Lodge's cafe. USA meets the unique staff of the traditional cafe on his first workday, all of them super pumped about their roles and acting out as historical characters. Unfortunately, they haven't got their facts straight, so they're always mixing up historical events. Later, our hero heads home totally wiped after his first day. Back at the Kawai complex, after being invited and then disinvited to a party, USA, with Mayumi and Sayaka's help, uncovers a chilling fact. The party's organizer turns out to be an old high school mate of USA's, who has completely transformed her look to become the popular girl. Hayashi, the girl, was a former classmate who used to scare him with ghost stories, and now she's back for more, this time as adults. Believing he's moved past all that, USA goes back to work, only to find out he has to serve Hayashi, who recognizes and mistreats him. Meanwhile, at the house, the ladies decide to take a walk and visit USA, leading Ritsu to wear a period costume that embarrasses her. When they arrive at the cafe, they see Hayashi's group belittling and humiliating USA, who silently endures the insults and tries to work. Just as USA is about to drown in ridicule and despair, Ritsu bravely stands up for him in a way she never has before, thrilling our hero as he watches the usually shy young woman articulate words to protect him. The other women join in, flocking to the guy, making the male diners jealous, and also humiliating Hayashi by causing her to lose some of her makeup. That night while dining, USA sits next to Ritsu, and she recommends a reading order for the books she lent him, realizing she's trying to cheer him up. They share a moment of connection, rudely interrupted by Mayumi reminding him that she helped by putting her boobs in USA's face, causing Ritsu to distance herself once again. Tegami, one of USA's classmates, falls hard for Mayumi and seeks our hero's help to win her over, but he warns him it might not be the brilliant idea he thinks it is. Indeed, Tegami couldn't have picked a worse time as Mayumi sinks into depression after finding out she's now the only single woman in her office, making her the object of pity. Sumiko discovers Mayumi's guitar, and the downhearted woman climbs to the roof to strum some tunes while the rest of the household sips tea, hoping her gloom will pass. With everyone else preoccupied, USA and Ritsu get a chance to talk about their past and present situations. They ponder why, despite the Kawai complex's chaos due to its eccentric residents, they can put up with it. Later, chaos erupts late at night when a centipede invades the girls' area. Ritsu recounts how, while reading a book in her room, what else would she be doing, a centipede appeared out of nowhere, sending her into a panic. She seeks out Sumiko, only to stumble upon her terrifying doll collection, and then turns to Mayumi, who isn't much help. Shirasaki explains that centipedes occasionally make their way into the house during the rainy season, but Sumiko usually takes care of them. Unfortunately, the landlady is away visiting a friend, so it's up to them to rid the house of the intruder. With the women's blessing, USA and Shirasaki bravely gear up with plastic bags and hot water thermoses to take on the insect. They first check Mayumi's room but quickly bypass it, realizing they'll never find anything in the mess. The centipede isn't found in Ritsu's room either, as she left the door open in her haste, meaning it could now be anywhere in the house, setting off alarm bells. While checking the patio with Ritsu, USA notices the worm on her back but hesitates to touch her, fearing a misunderstanding. Panic strikes Ritsu, causing a mishap that spills boiling water, scalding USA's arm as he saves her from getting burnt. When all seems lost, Sayaka effortlessly captures the centipede, explaining that dealing with them is common where she's from. When asked about her delay, she offers no explanation, but everyone figures she took her time putting on makeup before coming out. The next day, Tatami shows up at the Kawai complex in the morning, intending to ask Mayumi out, which somehow boosts her self-esteem, even though she has to restrain herself upon finding out the young man is only 15 years old. The historical cafe where USA works is arranging old books in its library when they suddenly realize they're short on books, and one shelf is left embarrassingly empty. So, the owner chats with Sumiko, who convinces Ritsu to lend some of her books in exchange for free tickets. The rest of the gang heads over to help arrange the books since Sumiko and the cafe owner have promised cake to anyone who helps. After everything is set, Shirasaki spots Hayashi, USA's ex-classmate, peeking through the window and recognizes her. They chat, and Hayashi shares how back in school, they were friends and she had feelings for him. But one day, she overheard two classmates calling her weird and wondering why USA put up with her, convinced that if it weren't for him, the others would tease her, making her feel like a burden to her dear friend. Feeling guilty about how she treated him the day she went to the cafe, she's looking for a way to apologize. Hayashi apologizes to USA, who accepts, much to the dismay of Sayaka and Mayumi, who demand a more heartfelt apology. Ritsu, also present, doesn't react, but later tells Sumiko she didn't enjoy the encounter much. At the Kawai complex, Chinatsu drops by after a long absence to have Shirasaki work on her summer project as compensation for making him feel left out. While working on the project, Chinatsu unintentionally angers Ritsu, noting that Ritsu is jealous of Hayashi, which she denies, realizing USA is a magnet for odd people and she doesn't fit into that world. Mayumi and Shirasaki grow impatient, warning that if she continues denying her feelings for USA, they'll end up in a rom-com scenario, which neither desires. At the end of the day, USA comes home only to find an angry Ritsu giving him the silent treatment. Since Chinatsu's last visit, things between USA and Ritsu have been painfully awkward. The Kawai complex livens up when Sunita, a high school classmate of Sayaka's, shows up unannounced. Despite being friends, USA and Mayumi are stunned by how different their personalities are. Knowing Sayaka from high school, Sunita is seen as an endless source of Sayaka's embarrassing tales. Later, USA makes another chilling discovery when Sumiko releases a rabbit into Sayaka's room, revealing her phobia of rabbits. Back at school, Mamura, a classmate of Ritsu's, notices her love for books and starts hanging out with her. USA can only watch helplessly as Ritsu's quiet life as a bookworm gets disrupted since becoming friends with Mamura leads to new experiences, like receiving text messages, which upsets our protagonist since he's known her for a while and doesn't have her phone number. Mamura invites Ritsu to a book lovers meetup, and though hesitant, Ritsu eventually agrees. On the day of the meetup, Sayaka accidentally runs into Ritsu and her new friends, realizing it's not a book gathering but a party Mamura is throwing. Thus, when Mamura's supposed book lovers meeting turns into a party, USA decides it's time to intervene. Ritsu realizes the true nature of the gathering and feels out of place for being thrown among strangers, but manages to hold a conversation about books. However, she gets offended when one of the attendees makes a remark about people's clumsy attempts at reading, which she finds insulting and reminds her of USA and his effort to share her hobby. She leaves the gathering in anger and receives a text from Sayaka asking if she needs help, but Ritsu replies there's no need for them to come to her rescue, as she'll be home soon. On the other end of the phone is USA, frustratedly wondering why he never asked for her contact information, reducing him to borrowing someone else's phone. Later, Ritsu arrives home to find USA waiting for her, and although her first instinct is to yell at him, she allows him to accompany her. The next day, Mamura apologizes, admitting she knew the meeting was actually a party and had lied, knowing Ritsu wouldn't attend on her own. Ritsu forgives her but gets upset when Mamura confesses she sent a photo she took with her phone to one of their classmates without telling her. Understanding it wasn't intentional, Ritsu asks for some time to sort out her thoughts, as she's not used to that way of thinking, to which her friend agrees. That night at the Kawai complex, Ritsu gets tipsy on plum wine. She opens up about her experiences with Mamura and unusually complains about USA's carefree attitude and his ongoing closeness to Hayashi. The following morning, Ritsu and USA agree to share their thoughts on the various characters in the book she lent him. Finally, USA gathers the courage to ask for her contact details. And thus ends this charming series. If you liked it and have similar series to recommend, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and see you in the next one.